Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist, and I'd like to welcome you to the December edition of my 2017 One Month to a More Effective Compliance Program podcast series, where each month I take a deep dive into a specific part of a best practices compliance program. In the month of December, I'm taking a deep dive into better written standards, which form the very backbone of your compliance program. Written standards include codes of conduct, policies, and procedures, and we're going to be taking a very deep dive into the design of all of these, training, and revising and updating. We'll also take a look at the information communicated by the Department of Justice on what specific policies should be included in your best practices compliance program, including policies on gifts, travel, business entertainment, charitable donations, facilitation payments, third parties, and cybersecurity. We'll also take a look at certain enforcement actions and opinion releases to see what other information we can glean from these. My sponsor this month is my Doing Compliance Masterclass. We recently concluded the first masterclass in November 2017. I'm co-hosting this with Jonathan Marks at Markham LLC. We will be putting on a full series of classes in 2018. Check back for details. This month's podcast series will give you information which will allow you to set up the very foundation of your compliance program. My podcast series on 1 month to a more effective compliance program is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network. Day 9, revising your policies and procedures. Simply having a code of conduct together with compliance policies and procedures is not enough for a best practices compliance program. As articulated by former Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, Lanny Breuer, said, "Your compliance program is a living entity. It should be constantly evolving." The 2012 FCPA Guidance stated, "When assessing a compliance program, the DOJ and SEC will review whether the company's guiding principles of enforcement has taken steps to make sure policies and procedures remain effective, and whether a company has reviewed and updated these policies and procedures." So some of the questions you may need to ask along revisions of your policies and procedures are the following. When was the last time your policies and procedures were released or revised? 2, have there been any changes to your company's internal controls since the last revision? 3, have there been any changes to relevant laws relating to a topic covered in your company's policies and procedures? Certainly, cybersecurity has become much more relevant, even if there are no specific laws that have been passed by Congress. 4, are there any policies and procedures that are outdated? I once worked at a company where there was a country club policy and procedure. That was obviated because the company decided never to pay dues for country clubs, but that happened 20 years ago, yet that specific policy and procedure was still on the record. And finally, number 5, is there a budget to revise your policies and procedures? After considering these issues, you should benchmark your current policies and procedures against other companies in your industry. If you decide to move forward, I suggest a process which can be fully documented as a basis to include revisions to your compliance policies and procedures. You should start with getting buy-in from senior leadership of your company. Your company's highest level must give the mandate for a revision to compliance policies and procedures. It should be the CEO, the general counsel, and the chief compliance officer, or better yet, a mandate of all 3 for this effort. Whoever gives the mandate, the person should be consulted at every major step of the policies and procedures revision process if it involves change in the key direction or the direction of key policies. 2, establish a core policies and procedures revision committee. You should have a cross-functional working group, which would be ideal to head up your effort to revise your policies and procedures. This group should include representatives from the following departments, although it may include more: legal, compliance, communication, HR. There should also be other functions which represent your company's basic domestic internal business units. Finally, there should be other functions represented such as finance, accounting, IT, marketing, and sales. From this large group, companies can be assigned for drafting to the functions based upon their relevance or necessity. These different functions would also solicit feedback from their functional peers and deliver a final proposed draft to the drafting committee. It is important that you establish a timetable for the revision process and you hold representatives accountable for meeting their revisions under your timetable. Next, conduct a thorough technology assessment. The cornerstone of the revision process is how your company captures, collaborates, and preserves the comments, notes, and edits and decisions during the entire project. In addition to the use of technology in revising your company policies and procedures, you should determine if they will be available in hard copy, online, or both. There must be a distribution plan, particularly if the code and compliance policies and procedures have previously only been available in hard copy. Next, determine the translations and localization of language issues. The 2012 guidance made clear that your company compliance policies and procedures must be translated into local language for your non-English speaking workforce, or even non-English as a first language speaking workforce. The key is that your employees have the same understanding of compliance policies and procedures, no matter what the language is used. Next, develop a plan to communicate the revised policies and procedures. A rollout is always critical because it is important that revised policies and procedures are communicated in a manner which encourages new employees to review and use the policies and procedures on an ongoing basis. Your company should use the full panoply of tools available to it under a 360-degree approach to communication to publicize the revised compliance policies and procedures. This can include a multimedia approach or physically handing out copies to all employees at a designated time, say Compliance Policies and Procedures Rollout Day. You might consider having a company-wide meeting where the new or revised documents are rolled out. But remember, as with all things in compliance, the three most important aspects are document, document, document. If you deliver, however you deliver the new policies and procedures, you must document that each employee receives it. Finally, stay on target and budget. You should work to set realistic expectations, to stay on a deadline and stay within your budget. What's going to be the revision process? How long is it going to take? Is it going to be multi-month? Is it 3 months, 4 months, 2 months? I would say 3 to 4 months is a minimum. This is equally applicable if it's new or revised. Also remember to keep a close watch on your budget so that you do not exceed it. These points are a useful guide not only to thinking about how to determine if your policies and procedures need updating, but also the practical steps to tackle them. If it has been more than 5 years since your policies and procedures were last updated, you should begin the process as soon as possible. It is far better to review and update, if appropriate, than wait for a massive FCPA investigation to go through the process. So what are today's 3 key takeaways? Well, number 1, if you have not revised your compliance policies and procedures in the past 5 years, you should move to do so now. 2, set a timeline and budget and stick to it in the compliance policy and procedure revision process. And 3, document your process of revision to demonstrate more complete operationalization of your compliance program as set out in the Department of Justice's evaluation of corporate compliance programs. This is Tom Fox. I hope you have enjoyed day 9 of 1 month to better written standards, and I hope you will join me tomorrow for Day 10. This is Tom Fox again. Thank you for listening to this episode of 1 Month to Better Written Standards in a Compliance Program. I hope you will join me tomorrow for another episode. If you have listened to this podcast on iTunes, I would ask that you would rate our podcast, as it would help in our rankings and also help get the word out about the only daily podcast which will give you a hint or tip to improve your compliance program. Also, if you have any questions, you can email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. This is Tom Fox. Thank you again for listening. I hope you'll join me tomorrow. My podcast series of 1 month to a better compliance program is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network.